It is 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. I know everybody's time is important. Welcome to the Gresham County Library Board of Trustees meeting. If anybody needs tonight's meeting agenda, it is out in the little alcove out there between the doorways. So we'll start with the consent agenda. Are there any items that we need to remove from the consent agenda and discuss individually? I will state briefly that part of the consent agenda is approving the entire agenda prior to the meeting, and the organization resolution and agreement for credit card program is actually not something we need to discuss today. It's an administrative issue that Renee found out does not need board approval. If that changes, we'll bring it back at a future meeting, but so you can cross that one off your agenda. So with that being said, are there any other items that we need to remove from the consent agenda and discuss individually?
I didn't see anything.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Wonderful. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Brazil.
Aye.
Trustee Hagan.
Aye.
Trustee Sasinski.
Aye.
All right, moving on to the administrative highlights. Local Authors Expo and one Nixa, one read.
And that's Brandon,
One of the Nixa branch manager to give an update about this, since it was kind of a big program that we did in our city.
So, yeah, thank you for having me. As you mentioned, I'm Brandon. I'm the manager here at the Nixa branch. And this year we did the first ever local authors expo. Tori, could you go to the next slide? Wow. So our author expo was this Saturday, April 20th this year. This was the first time that we had ever put on any kind of event like this. We were inspired by a similar event that Joplin Public Library has done for a couple of years now. Because there, as it turns out, a lot of local authors and writers in this region. I think last year we did some programming for local writers. It was like writers' workshops and self-publishing and things like that. And there was good turnout to those programs. And then, so we decided this year we should put on kind of an expo where local published authors could come and kind of sell their works, talk to other writers, talk to the community, get connections made and things like that. Next slide, please. So at the event, we had dozens of different authors, and they represented a diversity of backgrounds. They had books for multiple age groups. So children's books, young adult books, teen books, and adult books and titles were all represented. And then you can see up on the board the different genres as well. I was really struck by and impressed by just the breadth of different types of material and different types of authors that were represented. It wasn't all just historical fiction or all just poetry or something. We had things like educational curricula, nonfiction, mystery, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, picture books, poetry, everything like that represented. And it was just really an amazing event for the attendees and for the authors themselves. They got to make lots of good connections. So could you go to the next slide, please? In addition to the author booths, basically, we had presentations as well. We had 6 total, and they were kind of TED Talk style presentations from some of the participating authors. They gave topics such as how to keep historical fiction from sounding like a history lesson, leveraging AI for literary success, the benefits of self versus indie publishing. One was really cool, the value of audiobooks. This author actually records audiobooks that she writes, which is pretty neat, and just other subjects as well. So it was a really cool experience. You can kind of see the preview of one of those presentations there. Next slide, please. We also enticed people to come out and rewarded them for coming out by offering a prize basket. So dozens of, or multiple authors, donated copies of their works to this prize basket. And we also included a literary themed tote bag, socks and drinkware, and then the winner can pick that up at a later date, but we were glad to offer that as well. So, and then you can see kind of like the stats So 43 local authors participated when we were developing this program, which I don't think she's here right now, but I have to give a shout out to Charlie Evans, who's now our collection services director. She just made a lot of this magic happen. It was a team effort, but she just was incredible. So I have to give credit where credit's due. When we were planning, we kind of were hoping for maybe 20, 25. We hoped we would get that many authors to maybe attend. And so you can see the response was overwhelming. And we had it in this room where we're having the board meeting right now, and then also in a large meeting space elsewhere in the library. And it was just enough room for everybody. It was a great layout, and everybody really enjoyed it. If we grow, we'll have to kind of consider where we're gonna have the event or how we'll have it in the future. So 43 local authors participated, and then just over 200 people, including those authors, attended that 3-hour event. So many books were sold, connections were made, and we just promoted community this way at this completely free event. So next slide, please. Oh, perfect. I included some feedback, so we did give the participants, the authors, a feedback form to gather kind of like pros, cons, ideas that they had for future events. I will say we asked the participants if they would ever want to do something like this again, having since this is the first event that we've had. And everyone who responded, who gave the feedback form back, said yes. So that's a great indication. But you can kind of see some of the other comments there as well. We did have a lot of traffic, it was well attended, so they really liked the different authors and the setup. And there was one local author who I think had been to a couple of other events like this at different libraries, and she said ours was the best. So that was good to hear, especially since it was the first
brag about that at all.
But it's good, especially for our first time kind of event doing this. So next slide, you'll just see kind of a selection of pictures. We took a lot, but this just kind of represents, again, we had different authors offering different types of books. So we had children's, adults, and young adults content for the entire duration. It was a 3-hour program, and it just went really, really well. So yeah, so that was the local author fair. It was awesome. And Echo participated as well. I'm going to call you out because that was cool. Gave one of the presentations too, so that was neat. And then I did want to also talk this year about the One Nixa, One Read. So some people were here for that last year, and if you're unfamiliar with that, we started this last year. It's a partnership in conjunction with the City of Nixa and Nixa Public Schools who approached us about it. And it's just an event to get the entire community reading the same title, and then there will be different activities and themes and things like that throughout the month dedicated to that. So we're getting ready to kick that off again for the second year in a row, and this year we are going to be reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. You might have heard about it. And just like last year, we're going to be giving away free copies of the book, one per household. So anybody who would like a copy of that can get one to read along in the month of June. And then, next slide, please. We are going to have a couple of big events. So the first event is actually this Thursday, May 30th, here at the Nixa branch, 5 to 7 p.m. It's our kickoff. Last year we had a performance by CC Rhythm when we gave away copies of the book Wonder. This year CC Rhythm is coming back because they were so phenomenal last year. We wanted them. They dedicated themselves again. And we will have free copies of the book. We'll also have hot dogs and some sponsor booths, which I'll go into more in just a second. And then it's all going to culminate throughout the month. I should say we're going to have some discussion questions and activities that were assembled by the school librarians, the Nixa school librarians, and we're going to be posting those digitally to encourage people to kind of do different things throughout the month and visit different places in the community. And then lastly, it's all going to lead up to the movie in the park, which is on Friday, June 28th at Macaulay Park. The film will start at dusk. We'll have ice cream and other snack vendors, and we're going to watch the original Willy Wonka.
I was asking which version
Yeah,
are
that was my
you watching?
question.
The original, the Gene Wilder wonderfulness. So, and then, yeah, this is kind of the last slide. So you can kind of see here our partners again, the City of Nixa, Nixa Public Schools, and Christian County Library pull together to pull off this event. This year, in conjunction with, elements of the book, we actually have a golden ticket system. And so everybody who comes to the event, every child, I should say, who comes to the kickoff event, and then as long as we have supplies left, will get a golden ticket in addition to the book that we'll be giving out. The golden ticket is sponsored by the list of Nixa businesses that you see listed there next to the golden ticket symbol. And with their sponsorship, we have been able to use that funds through the Nixa Education Foundation to purchase more copies of the book, and it does purchase the ice cream at the Movie in the Park event as well. And so the golden ticket is going to encourage the families to go around the Nixa community to those sponsored businesses throughout the month of June. And they'll do fun stuff with their businesses and stuff as well. But then they'll redeem the golden ticket for free ice cream at the park. That's the idea.
Heart of the Ozarks doing the ice cream at the park.
Heart of the Ozarks is doing the ice cream, so yes, they're delicious. I've
Yes.
had them at the Sucker Days Festival a couple times, and it's so good. And then finally, the people, oh, I'm sorry, could you go back once? The other organizations that have made this possible, everything that I've talked about is completely free for everybody to do. And the people who have made that possible are the Nixa Community Foundation, who gave some money, we got some money from them to purchase the original round of books and hot dogs and things like that for the kickoff event. Nixa Education Foundation, MG Cares, and then Heart of the Ozarks Ice Cream Delights also gave us a deal on the ice cream. So, thank you, a huge thank you to them and to the sponsors this year. We've kind of done a lot more with this year than we did this year. So, yeah, starting the summer off with a bang. Any questions?
I had a question about have you had local authors who weren't at this year's event or reach out to you about wanting to be part? I know.
Not specifically since the event, but we did have some after we cut off the registration who were kind of interested, and they had heard about it later. And so they were definitely interested. So more than the 43 people who were there were wanting to come. So we're definitely going to be doing it again.
That's
It's a great event. So yeah.
So great.
I have a question. You
Yes.
also related to the local authors expo. You had said that everyone who responded in the feedback form said they would participate again. How many people have responded so far?
Ooh, I'd have to
There's just
count
like
that up
ballpark.
again. Maybe 30
Oh,
that's
fantastic.
fantastic.
Much
out of the 43.
different than 5.
That's actually
What
a great
was
question
service?
to clarify. That was
Yeah.
a lot of people responded.
Awesome.
So, and
Great.
really, I mean, I'm not just saying this to report something good, but the comments were all really good, So I was just really happy about that. And not just to, know that we did a good job, but that they had a good time and thought it was beneficial, so.
They gave some good suggestions for next year. There was a lot, I talked to several that this was their first time doing an event like this, so they were learning from other authors, which was really cool to be able to provide that kind of thing too. So some of them asked about having more time just with each other, so we've talked about maybe doing a reception just for the authors beforehand or something next time, so that they can just talk and network and learn. And some of them were coming in and setting up their booths and looking at what other people were doing on their booths and I need to up my game a little bit on my booth, so it was kind of cool to see that.
Yeah, it was neat. Some of the booths had obviously their books to sell, but then they had some other bookish related things that the people had made or that they can sell too. So it was really neat. And we also had the Springfield Writers Guild, I believe is what they're called. Anyway, a big local writers group. They were represented as well with the booth, and they had multiple authors at their table. But that was just another cool way to kind of connect the authors and the writers who attended. They had another option to meet even more people and develop their craft. So.
I think the only negative feedback we got on those responses was room
Oh, it
temperature,
was
and
cold.
some said it was too cold, and some said it
Some
was
said it
too
was too hot.
Right.
I don't know what to do about
The
it.
perfect temperature.
Like,
I know,
very
I do
much.
think
Like
this room
that's
gets,
typical conference
This room's
feedback.
always cold.
Yeah, or hot.
layer.
We were
Fair.
adjusting the temperature a lot.
Yes.
Like, as it did get cold, and then we were
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, we need to turn it back on. Like, it was just, yeah, so. But yeah, it was great. We all had a great time, so.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, old business, pre-design services.
Okay, so this evolved a little since 2 months ago. So last time we talked, I had quotes from both SAP and Paragon. And I went and got had a third conversation with Dake Wells. So that they are willing to work within our budget is basically what they said, although they didn't give us an official quote. So here's what came up in the conversation with them specifically, and then sort of when I followed up with SAP about like the cost of, if you'll recall, their cost included an HVAC engineering assessment. So I knew that that was gonna be an additional cost and not the same as what the other two were proposing. So they gave us an updated proposal, which was it was $9,000. That's included in here too. That doesn't include the HVAC engineering assessment. So what came up in those conversations is that in Missouri, when you're doing an architectural project, you're supposed to select an architect based upon qualifications. You do that first, and then you negotiate price with them. So my understanding going into it is that is the process you do when you're doing like the big full project, like the whole design build process. I didn't think that applied to like the pre-design services. I did consult with our attorney just to make sure it wasn't doing something weird. He's like, no, what you're doing is fine for this particular set of services. The Dake Wells views it differently, so that's why they didn't feel comfortable giving an actual quote. I do think like all of them are going to work within our budget. So I do think it makes sense to make a selection based upon their qualifications. The problem is then like, how do you decide who's more qualified? And we didn't do an official RFQ where we asked them to send us qualifications and everything. So there are a couple of different ways to handle this at this point. You know, we can talk through kind of the uniqueness of each of these and just make a decision today and do the pre-design services, knowing they're all gonna work with our budget, they're all gonna have, they're all qualified to do basic pre-design services. We could like take a couple steps back and do a whole big RFQ process, but then we sort of have to know what we're looking for, and it feels a little cart before the horse for us right now, considering we need just the basics of what is possible and how much is that looking at, so then we can start planning over the next few years of how to raise funds for this, how to plan for it, that sort of thing, how to then, we'll want to gather community feedback, all of that kind of thing about what do we really, all of the details of what we want in a renovation and the timeline. So the third way of handling this right now is to sort of scrap all this and kind of do it ourselves. Like I can do some research with other directors and just the industry to find out some ballparks of based upon square footage and location, what's a large ballpark, like we wouldn't get down into minutia of cost, but here's what we can expect. It'll be like $5 to $7 million for a renovation of 22,000 square feet. And we can do some internal design ourselves of like, we have some floor plans, we can make some stuff up and make it like a pretty picture to where we would then, if we're talking to a potential donor, take it to them. I don't love that idea just because it's gonna be real loose and not with a lot of expertise of, what walls can we move, what is possible with the space, that kind of thing, but it is an option. So with all that being said, I guess what questions do you have? What do you need to make a decision of how to proceed from here?
Well, you're the one who's talked to all of these places, so what would be, if I were to say to you right now, like, pick one, based on your comfort level?
I can work with any of them. They were all good to work with. I did, Paragon was real simple and easy to work with. Dake Wells was very methodical and educational, and they're very interested in like walking with us through the whole process. They would love us to like select them for the whole thing and help us figure out every step of the way, which is lovely, but not what we're asking for at this point. SAP is great in that they know our facility, our existing facilities, our brand, kind of, they've done all of the renovations and the buildings that we've done. So they were the initial ones I reached out to because we had an established relationship. So if you, put thumbtacks to my, fingernails, then I would probably say SAP because they're my first instinct because of the established relationship, and they are clearly very qualified. They have done tons of work in Christian County specifically and in libraries in the state in general. But I did love some of the ideas and conversation that kind of flowed out of the conversations with Paragon and Dave Wells too. It's a small project. It's a really initial phase, so I don't want to overthink it too much also. So I think my recommendation would be SAP. But I hesitate because I'm like, I love Paragon and Dave Wells too. So I'm fine with
We won't
either
tell
of
anybody
them.
what you said. It's not being recorded.
I think though, when we do get to the point where we're doing, okay, we're starting the design and build process and we're doing an RFQ, I think that we will need to give serious consideration to all three of these if they respond to those.
So for both SAP and Paragon, what we're looking for is pre-design work, things that we could consider,
Yes.
but doesn't necessarily mean we would go with them through the
Correct.
whole project
Correct.
where Dake Wells isn't really giving us what we asked for.
They did, I did clarify with them, following up after they sent this, I said, can you do what the other two have
Right.
said, just a finite project, start and stop, and they said, absolutely, we do that all the time. We don't think it's the ideal way to plan a thing like this, which I respect, but they said, absolutely, we'll do that and we'll work within your budget to do it.
I got put off by the letter from Dave Wells.
I mean, I understand, and all of them, I learned a lot in this process. Sometimes it does come across, they're educating, and they're trying to be careful not to be condescending about it too, but they know their industry standards and regulations, and they have what they feel like they have to work in with. So I appreciate the education and their perspective, but yeah, it was interesting because they all approached it very differently. So even in the industry, they view it kind of differently. So.
I mean, I guess my question to the board is, do we feel comfortable voting to select one of these right now? Diana says
For the
no.
pre-design
pre-design.
services.
I want a little more time to digest what they've sent.
Okay, and you weren't here at the
No, I
last
wasn't here
meeting.
last time, and this is the first I've seen of this Dake Wells material that's really, really long.
Yeah.
And
It
I
really
can-
isn't. It's a lot of pictures.
I
It's a lot of pictures, but it's.
No, really. I was
Yeah.
looking online, and when I saw it, like at first, I was like, oh my god. The other thing that was kind of off-putting about Dake Wells is that, like, it's a wide span. Like, one is 2.5 million, and the other is like 10 million. And like, we're looking at two other, quotes of 9,000. So.
Well, that was
Granted,
a total project, right?
No, I understand it's the total project, but like we can't compare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes it really difficult.
Would you mind if we tabled it till next month's meeting so we could go home and reread the materials and
No, I don't mind. There's not really an urgency in doing this other than just getting something rolling on a project that we talked about for, before we even bought the building. So the time sensitivity would mostly be if whoever we pick, if we want to get it done in time to plan anything for a next step for next year's budget. So then we'll hit up against that October timeline or October, November when we look at budget. But I think with what we're asking, I think all of them seem like they can do it within that time frame, even if we delay a month. You have a lot of, like, Dake Wells basically sent their qualifications. So do you want something similar from the other two that's more expansive, or do you feel like what you have from each of them is enough?
I'd like to see more material from the other two.
I think that's an acceptable.
Kind of like like Dave Wills has information about some of their past projects that are library projects. I'd kind of like to see that from the other two and see what they've done.
I do, like this will be a small project for all of them, so I wanna be respectful of the time they're putting into pitching to this as well. I don't think, they probably have something canned that they can share with us. They do have a lot on their website, all of them, so, like Christian County Library's featured on SAP's website because of the Spartan Clever Ranches and even the Nixa renovation about 6 years ago.
Were you with the library when they did this Spartan Clever Branch?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, was the library generally happy with their work though?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I've talked to a lot of library directors. All three of these are well respected by library directors. I mean, everyone has different opinions about them. Springfield Green County is doing 3 capital projects right now, and they have one of them for each project. So that's kind of how it works.
I was with the board when we selected the architectures for the other, for Clever and Sparta. And they, you can be more extravagant, it's easy to see. And I visited quite a few libraries this last month, and there's so many different designs, from more simplistic to a little bit more elaborate, all depending on budget. What they gave us, they addressed the airiness, the ability to move things around, the ability to do expansion as the communities enlarge, since Christian County is a fast-growing community in Missouri.
I know with the Clever and the Sparta branches, I know they built it and set it on the lot so it could be expanded.
There can be
in the
expanded,
future.
and with design, so I think, and if there were, and there were a few minor issues with the construction or something, and it was addressed, they were addressed, it was followed through on, things, and I don't know a lot about Clever. I know it's almost a mirror image of Sparta, but the Sparta branch seems to function well and adjust to the different needs as the community needs change. It seems to adjust a bit. So, but I would like to reread. I'm not so much worried about the pretty pictures, but I would like to get on their websites and read over these 3. Do we need to make a motion for this to be tabled, or can we just add it to old business for next month?
We can just add it to all business.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So do you want me to get material for you, or do you all want to just look at websites and such?
I can just look at the websites.
I can look at
Yeah,
websites.
especially if you're concerned about asking too much for a small project.
Well, and then we can actually look at it and do some research before the next board meeting.
Okay.
So, okay, great.
New business, Missouri Evergreen. Echo asked for this to be added to the agenda. I appreciate, Echo, you letting us move it to this month's meeting, since I was not at the last meeting, and neither was Diana. What questions did you have? I'm not sure what,
I'd certainly like to learn more about it. On the surface, I've been following along with St. Charles Library and falling into budgetary issues and having to close branches as a result. And so I'm very sensitive to our overall costs, especially with the library expansion on the horizon. And so in looking at the initial material that our community members were able to provide for us, it certainly looks significantly better economically. So I'm sure there's much more to the story than that. So I'd love to learn more about have we considered this? How does it compare line by line to what we've got now? The benefits that they have offered in other branches, I think it was Camden County, keep me honest if that's not the case, but they were able to offer things like some of the rating systems and things that our patrons have been asking for. So it sounds like it checks several of the boxes, from being a steward of fiscal responsibility, as well as some of the things that our patrons and our community members have requested. So it seems to meet the needs for our community as far as lending, looking at the numbers in their collection of what's available for patrons. I've researched, a number of the other libraries. They seem to serve large and small across the state of Missouri. So I like what I see, and so I'm curious what we've done to research. Is this an option for Christian County? Have we gone down this road, researched previously with the board, or in the past, or again, before or after your tenure, I don't know. So I'd love to learn more on the context of it being an option for Christian County.
I don't know if the board has ever looked at it before. When Missouri Evergreen came into existence, Christian County Library was already part of Mobius. And when Evergreen started, it was just a few libraries and kind of an experimental thing. So I think it was probably just one of those things to watch and see how it developed. It's hard to compare. It's not apples to apples because Missouri Evergreen is both a shared ILS software as well as a resource sharing consortium. And we have our shared ILS is CoolCat is the front, the patron end, and the back end is called Sierra, is what staff use. That is shared with Springfield Green, so we have a contract with them. And then Mobius is a separate piece of software, and that is our resource sharing consortium. So Missouri Evergreen would definitely cost us less. And so I think that it's, definitely something to keep an eye on and consider for the future, but it doesn't, currently there are not the same number of resources and libraries in it as far as the volume of materials that Mobius does. So I believe Missouri Evergreen has something like 3 or 4 million items, which I think that's like 1.5 million unique titles. I'm not positive on that. Mobius has about 30 million items with about 13 unique titles. So it's about 10 times the amount. So Missouri Evergreen also is only public libraries. And there are a few that are larger than us, but if we were in it, we would be one of the largest. Not that that's necessarily a downside, but it's something to keep in mind. Whereas we're one of the smallest public libraries in Mobius, so we reap the benefit of borrowing from library systems that are a lot bigger. Having the academic institutions in Mobius gives us access to a lot of materials that we wouldn't buy because of either cost or a really unique nature. There are a lot of religious academic institutions in Mobius, so we do find that we borrow a lot of religious materials that we wouldn't necessarily have the money or the space to collect, and that other public libraries may not have the volume of. So that's something to consider. Evergreen is an open source product. So if you're not familiar with how open source works, it has some pros and cons in that it is sort of, you can sort of crowdsource the development of it, so it doesn't box you into whereas what we have with Springfield Green is we buy a product from a vendor, and if we want enhancements or features added, we have to ask them, and they decide whether or not to develop it or not. And then sometimes we pay for those if they are added, whereas with an open source product, if you have the expertise and the developers, then you can just make it do whatever you need it to do. Theoretically, there are limits to what technology can do for you. So it has grown a lot since it began. So I think, 5 years from now, it may be even a more robust product, but as it exists right now, it doesn't have all of the same functionality, especially from the staff side of software that our Sierra product does. So I think staff would lose some functionality and patrons would have a little bit different experience, but I haven't looked at it in a while, so I don't know 100% apples to apples, is it better or not? It being open source gives it a lot of more possibilities for the future than an out-of-the-box system, but it still is dependent upon developers being available to develop and add on features and stuff.
Okay, so, and I was trying to take notes. When you were talking about the relationship between Mobius and CoolCat, can you explain that to me again?
So with CoolCat, we share the software with Springfield Green. So our staff software is the same as them as far as when we're checking out in and out to patrons, when we're cataloging materials, when we're running reports on materials. That's a completely separate piece of software. If we were not members of Mobius, we would still have all of that.
Okay.
The Mobius piece is kind of an add-on. It's called a union catalog. It's another catalog to go to that you can search, and then our patrons can request materials from it to come here, just as if they were requesting something from Sparta to come to Nixa, et cetera. So with Missouri Evergreen, those two are both the same. It is just one shared catalog, and those libraries in Missouri Evergreen borrow with each other. We don't have what's called reciprocal borrowing with Springfield Green. We can borrow from them through Mobius, but not directly just using the software. Does that help?
It does help. So would we still then utilize CoolCat if we went through Missouri Evergreen, or that
No.
would sever the relationship
Yes.
with Springfield Green County?
Correct.
And then we would have, but in exchange, we would have, like the interlibrary opportunities with other public libraries.
Right, in the
Okay.
ones in Evergreen. So
In
we do have
Evergreen,
some
okay.
public libraries in Mobius. There are fewer, but they are much larger than any of them in Evergreen. So for instance, St. Louis County Library is in Mobius. Their entire collection is about the size of the entirety of Missouri Evergreen, because they are just one of the largest in the state. Tulsa City County is similar in size to St. Louis County and is also in Mobius. There's some Iowa public libraries, there's Arkansas, and then St. Charles City County is larger than us. Most of the public libraries, except for some of the Iowa ones, that are in Mobius are much larger than we are. So their collections are just bigger.
Is Missouri restricted to Missouri, or I'm sorry, is Missouri Evergreen restricted to Missouri only?
Currently, I don't know if it will always be that way. Mobius used to be, and they changed the way they were structured and expanded, so changed their structure so that they could expand. So Missouri Evergreen might be able to do that in the future. I don't know if that's on their radar or not.
And then what academic libraries are in Mobius? You mentioned that a minute ago.
There's about 50 or 60 of them. The University of Missouri System, Missouri State, Central Missouri, Southeast Missouri,
I brought from
all
WashU
the,
before.
yeah, WashU, St. Louis University, a lot of the little ones up in the Kansas City and St. Louis area. It started as an academic consortium and then expanded to add the publics like 12, 15 years ago.
So you said, I'm assuming, based off of what you just said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that Missouri Evergreen, how Camden County is using it, how it was brought to our attention at the meeting a couple months ago, that's an open source. They are creating something for that, or is that something that Missouri Evergreen generically does?
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure exactly how they're using it. I know they have put information in item records, which Sierra has the capability of doing in CoolCat, and we've talked about people using like even what's existing in the catalog before as a tool to help find material. So as far as the other things that they have proposed doing, I don't know specifically what else in Echo, maybe you know how else they're using their software that I could explore to see if it's something.
Yeah, I think, and that Camden
Technologically
is one that
can do.
offered to come here and share their experience with the board or with the group, however we would want to handle that, to give some specific feedback on that sort of scenario.
And explain the process. So, I've switched CRMs, donor databases before. It's a pain in the ass. So like, tell me what the process is from a standpoint of something like this. Is it similar? Is it?
Probably similar. So we have kind of annual agreements with both Mobius and Springfield Green that renew. So we would have to give enough notice if we were going to not renew those things. So with Mobius, it's basically a year in advance that you have to notify if you're leaving, and Springfield Green's similar. But if we were going to consider changing ILS software, that would be an RFP process. It's a high enough dollar amount, even if like one of the bids came in lower. we would need to do a whole RFP, which is extensive when it comes to that kind of software. It's the single biggest piece of software that libraries use. There are a lot of specific features, so that could take, easily 3 to 6 months to just develop the RFP. That is something that actually Springfield Green and us have talked about doing in the future, like jointly and separately, to see if we want to explore other products either together or similarly. So that would be an extensive process, and that would have a lot of review, and we'd have to look at multiple different vendors. There are several others out there that would potentially respond, 3 or 4 other vendors. And then if Missouri Evergreen has, because they are supported by state funds, they have limits on how many libraries can join each year, because it's they have capacities that they reach. So it would depend upon like if they could even add us, like, and what timing is that? A year from now? Is that 2 years from now? Is that 3 years? You know, I don't know what that would look like.
You said that the development of the RFP could take 3 to 6 months. Would that include the amount of time that it takes to receive input from the organizations that are providing the proposals? Or is it 3 to 6 months and then we open it up? Okay.
Yeah.
And then how long do we have to keep it open, or do we?
I think we can set that, probably a month or 2, at least 30 days for sure, but maybe longer depending upon, I don't know, it's been a while since I've been involved in that kind of an RFP. So then they would likely want to do like presentations, like it would be like a design build process for building a branch, like that extensive of it. It would also be, you can't just turn one off and turn another on, so there's some overlap. So in a year that you would switch from one system to another, you'd kind of have to plan to pay twice for, so it would cost more the first year that you switched, because you have to have some overlap time for moving data and training and setup and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a
And how does that affect the community and our patrons at that point?
we could minimize the impact, but they would be learning a new, catalog interface. But not that that should necessarily stop us. There's the software that we have now, Sierra with CoolCat. There is a new product available that would be a replacement to the CoolCat interface that is really lovely, and I'm excited about some of the features. It is something that we can consider adding in the future. So that would be a change for the patrons and for staff. So those are things.
But it's nothing that would be like everything's shut off right now and our patrons wouldn't, would there be a period of time where patrons wouldn't be able to access?
There might be a few days or a week or something. We should be able to keep it minimal. There is, anytime you migrate patron and bibliographic data like that, there's some potential for loss. And depending upon whatever system you go to, and I don't know what Evergreen supports, things like reading history could be lost in a migration. Some of the things like fines, payment history that are stored in our staff side of things, that could be lost too. A lot of softwares have the ability to move that now, so that's not a huge concern, but it is something that we would ask for in an RFP, like retain patron, account data or something like that, and have it accessible in some way, whether by staff or by patrons. So.
Okay. Would we, this may be getting the cart before the horse, but I'm thinking about instances when we've had like major, or when I've been a part of major like system transitions or onboarding to systems where we, may have benefited from having, in one instance, we had a project manager on our side who was kind of driving the transition, and in another instance, we did not have that, and it showed that we didn't have additional resources to kind of help with the transition. Would something like this require additional resourcing? If we were to proceed with an RFP and make a decision to transition, would we need to consider additional resources?
Probably yes.
But maybe part of what we're.
Maybe.
Okay.
I will typically be like, yes, we need more resources.
For sure.
Always. But I don't know the scope of them. I do know, most, software providers are going to, give you a lot of assistance with that kind of thing in a migration. So, I don't know. So part of what is really valuable for us with our relationship with Springfield Green is that we don't have to have on staff a system administrator for the integrated library system software. And I don't think we would need one with Missouri Evergreen, but I'm not sure what all we would need to do with that as far as settings and configuration that Springfield Green does for us now. So they're very different kinds of software, with one being open source, so I don't know for sure about that, but it is something to consider. Because we've looked at or when I was working at Springfield Green and working with some of the libraries who shared the software, some of them would look at, like, maybe they want to go solo on their own software, and that was usually the clincher. Like, they might be able to afford the software by themselves, but they can't afford the staff person required to administer the software. So that is something to consider. But I like Missouri Evergreen is the libraries that are in it love it and have good things to say about it. It is a good product. None of them have been in Mobius though, so they have gone from just them and doing traditional interlibrary loan, which takes a lot longer, to where, like, for us, it would be, I would consider it a downgrade just from the volume of materials. And I don't know enough about the ins and outs of the software to know for sure how much of a downgrade or upgrade that would be from the software.
Because one of Echo's concerns, obviously valid concerns, is the financial situation. Do you think is there a downside on the financial side to switching to Evergreen?
Then what is the financial difference?
So I haven't run like specifically all the numbers, but it could save us like $10,000 to $15,000 a year, which is not nothing.
No.
Unless you have to hire a system administrator.
It's true. I don't think we would have to, but we might have to hire a part-time person, to help with
So it offsets.
some stuff. Maybe, I don't know for sure, but
Okay.
the downside I do, would be cognizant of and going to that is it is supported by the state library right now. But that is state funding that comes through IMLS that is not always guaranteed. So if they lost that state funding, or a future Secretary of State or state librarian didn't feel as passionate about that particular project, they could lose funding and the costs would go up. I don't know by how much. I don't know how much the state library is subsidizing it, but that would be a financial concern that we would need to think through if that is something when we're pursuing.
Well, are there any other questions before? Okay.
No.
Not sure if anyone wants to take action tonight. I think this is a lot to download. But I don't want to step on any toes, so does anyone feel strongly?
Did you say that there haven't been any other systems or any other libraries that have used Mobius that have transitioned to Missouri Evergreen?
No, well, Camden County was on Mobius, but I think they are the only ones. I don't think any of the other libraries were on Mobius before Evergreen. They had went from just solo libraries, or they were in some other consortium but didn't have like resource sharing, like with Mobius or.
And how long has Camden County been on Evergreen?
I'm not sure, maybe 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so they have been, okay.
Few years.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yes,
I
I
thought-
for sure.
I think at least 5.
Okay, I was
I'm not
thinking, I thought you were gonna say like 5 to 10 months.
Oh, no, no,
Like,
no,
let's- can we just watch what happens to them?
Yeah, no, but I think that amount of time may be beneficial to have a conversation with them to understand their experiences, what drove them to make the decision, what changes have they experienced in the last 5 to 10 years, positive and negative, just to get a full picture.
Echo, you said someone would be willing to
I
talk to
believe
us.
so, yeah. I'm happy to table this for tonight to continue to allow us all to research, and then I can reach back out to those guys and
I'd
see if
appreciate
they,
that.
submitted or come here or.
Yeah, I think that.
Do you want someone from like the Missouri Evergreen office to come and talk about, or?
I mean, from my perspective, and again, this is just me and I'm just one person, so please let me know if you guys think differently, but I would rather the people that are using the software, because Missouri Evergreen's gonna tell us everything they want us to hear. Yeah, you know, just like if Mobius came, they would tell us all the reasons we should stick with them. So I think hearing from, and us being able to ask our questions to someone to, you know, a library that's using it, would probably be more helpful than.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with Allison. Maybe somebody from Camden County.
Yeah, from the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it matters, I'll move to table to our July meeting, because I will be out of state for our June meeting, so.
Oh, okay.
That'll give you 2 months.
July
it is.
I wouldn't count out maybe having somebody from Missouri Evergreen. I don't know how the RFP would work, or if it would signify any type of bias if we had them come and talk to us.
I think as long as we gave the same opportunity to any other
Oh, okay.
vendors responding to
Well,
the
then I
RFP,
think that, you know, maybe.
let's have a debate.
If you hear from one, you must hear from them all. Yeah.
Have a bug?
But I think, you know, an organic next step would maybe be the.
Okay. All right.
Let it live.
Gonna let
Stephanie
free the bug.
Sorry.
It's like, did you bring it from Sparta?
I brought it from Sparta. It came with me. I don't know what that was.
Okay, well then we'll table this to July, give everyone a chance to download, and Renee a chance to maybe reach out to Camden County and talk to them. Next item on the agenda is the open trustee position. The West County position is open right now because Stephanie is choosing not to renew or apply for the her next term. So we appreciate all you have done for the library.
It's been really exciting, and an opportunity to show my kids, you know, participating in your community. But I'm missing my daughter's blogging right now,
Oh,
so it's just a time that they're
When-
busier now
when
than they
does-
used to be.
When does this come into effect?
I think I'm here next month, but at the end of
June 30th will be the official. And we have the commission is handling the application process and the selection process, like last year. We have shared in our email newsletter this month, and then there will be like a social media post like we typically do when there's an opening. So the information is out there for people to apply.
all right. We are now moving into the public comments portion of the meeting. As for the board's updated public comment policy, as a general rule, the board will not respond to public comments at the time they are made. The board may ask clarifying questions, comment, or take action at their discretion. Questions for staff about library operations should be made during normal business hours. Again, I ask for some decorum and respect during this time, no raising of voices, and if you do leave, need to step out, you can close that door for the in-between and stay between there. If you can help not going outside completely and coming back in, we would appreciate it. And yeah, just, we've done this before, we'll do it again. We have, let's see, 6 speakers tonight, so we should be good on that 30-minute time limit. But as you remember, you have 3 minutes to speak, and that time starts from when you come up. So if you're handing things out, things like that, so just keep that in mind. All right, and I am going to butcher the first name, or the last name of the first person who's speaking. Laura? Okay, you said it. I figured you would know.
Now that she said it,
Yeah.
phonetic.
Yeah, now it makes sense.
It's my husband's name, so. Last month was my first time attending the Christian County Library meetings, and I was appalled by the rhetoric that I heard. The threats that were being given to the library staff and the bullying by a limited number of residents towards the LGBTQ community as a whole. Libraries are a state-funded entity and therefore should be separate from church doctrine. That is our Constitution, and that was in the Constitution for a reason. Thomas Jefferson stated that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God. It's when man pushes his religions on others, it becomes oppression. America allows freedom of religion for all sorts in our 50 states, but it also was founded on separation of church and state. And what I heard from this group was the MAGA religious far right spewing propaganda from alternative outlets, such as the New York Post, which is ran by Rupert Murdoch, who was recently fined for $787.5 million for false election claims. I'm not sure why the right is attracted to alternative media and conspiracies over factual information, but they are. They exist in an alternative reality. They are being instructed by the Federalist Society, Steve Bannon, and Koch brothers, who is oil and gas, to have instructed their minions, including right-wing churches, to go out and attack and divide our community over the LGBTQ community. Do you know who else did that? Hitler. And the Nazis did that. Fascism is alive and well in America. Fascist Nazis attacking minorities and separating them. They diminish their value and who they are as a person. One lady here said that they are not here to ban books from the library. No, you are here to diminish the value of a segment of the human population under the guise of religion, hiding behind a cross. And you're doing it by taking a segment of books and removing them from shelves and keeping them hidden. That is anti-American, anti-democratic, and fascistic in practice. Shame on you. Make no mistake, these attacks on schools and libraries are very well organized and very well funded. I suggest the library bring in a book called They Came for the Schools, which was written by an investigative reporter, Mike Hixenbaugh, and bring in that book and learn more about what these people are doing to diminish our schools and our libraries. Thank you.
David Rice.
Good evening. All right, Library Board of Trustees. Today we have a crucial decision regarding the future of our library's resource sharing capabilities and financial stewardship. As public institutions, libraries must utilize taxpayer funds responsibly while maximizing value and services for our community. The two main consortiums for interlibrary lending in Missouri are Mobius, geared towards academic libraries, and Missouri Evergreen, utilized by the majority of public libraries across the state. Missouri Evergreen's mission is to strengthen and promote excellent library services through cost-effective resource sharing, cost savings, and member collaboration. According to Missouri Evergreen's fiscal year 2024 fee schedule, this consortium offers significant savings. Libraries comparable to ours pay $19.79 to $37.13 annually, while the estimated Mobius cost is around $12,000. Over 5 years, the $40,000 plus in savings with Evergreen could be reinvested into improving our facilities and services. Not only is Evergreen more affordable, but its mission aligns with public library needs. Conversely, Mobius aims to absorb Evergreen members, potentially increasing costs for redundant academic services most patrons do not require. Missouri Evergreen has demonstrated sustainable growth, expanding from 4 libraries in 2012 to 65 systems and 175 branch locations today, including major systems like St. Joseph and Jefferson County. This growth underscores its valued proposition for public libraries. Moreover, Evergreen provides robust resource sharing with 4.3 million shareable items, integrated library software tailored for practicality and efficiency, plus modern services like mobile apps, RFID, and curbside pickup. These capabilities allow us to meet evolving patron needs cost effectively. Crucially, Missouri Evergreen receives technical support funding from the state library, strengthening its resource and long-term viability. Patrons already appreciate the expanded access, with one saying it opens up so much more information. It was a wonderful decision. We cannot overpay for superfluous services when our budget struggles to cover basic operational needs. Potential conflicts of interest must not sway this decision. Our duty is to steward public funds while delivering exceptional library services prudently. I was trying to make up a word. The evidence clearly favors Missouri Evergreen as a wise financial choice, offering robust, affordable resource sharing tailored to public libraries. Let us seize this opportunity to optimize taxpayer resources and ensure sustainable, high-quality services for our community. Thank you for your consideration. I welcome any further questions, and the sources are on the bottom if you want to look them up. So thank you.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Juanetta?
I didn't know who that was from.
No.
So this was, you provided this?
Yes,
Okay,
I did,
perfect,
yeah.
thank you.
When talking with friends about the Christian County Public Library and their unregulated placement of age-inappropriate books in the kids section, I always get the same response. I just don't understand. Why would anyone place those books in the kids section? That just doesn't make sense. One of the speakers last month opined over that very subject. Why has the library board not been willing to compromise? They have already lost 2 seats to more level-headed people. Do they not see the writing on the wall? I no longer ask that question. I've come to a sad conclusion. Secular progressivism has been growing in America for decades and is at the root of the darkness and the rot. It isn't a political movement, it's an evil alternative religion which has been cleverly disguised as politics to keep the church silent. There is no other logical explanation as to why board members would be willing to double down so hard on this agenda that they're willing to sacrifice their seats for the cause. And here's the sad thing about these cultural situations. Everyone in our country knows that something is very wrong. There's been so much deception and propaganda over several decades that people are just polarized by it all. Case in point, 2 months ago, several people with an opposing view spoke at the March meeting. The thing that struck me is that I actually agreed with many of their points. 2 speakers spoke about history and the need to preserve it. I love history. I believe that we should examine and preserve all history, both good and bad. The 15-year-old young lady who spoke was lovely, and I agreed with her stance on censorship. I firmly believe that we are not as far apart as it may seem, but we have been manipulated and lied to believe that we are. There's an insidious evil working through the media and political institution, both sides in this country. It has been attempting to both overturn our traditional values and to accomplish the Marxist goal of dividing our population and turning us against each other, all the while fattening their own wallets and diverting attention from what they are doing. The evil is an accuser, whispering, "You can't talk about that, church, because that's politics," into the ears of Christians, while Marxist authors like Saul Alinsky meticulously lay out Rules for Radicals, a book he dedicated to Satan to incite cultural revolution in America. And the spirit of the accuser was loud and clear in the March meeting. When the board president barked shrill, disrespectful orders at my daughter for holding up documentation pertaining to the discussion at hand that would restrict free speech to the public, and moments later demanded that the public show her respect, great hypocrisy was evident. And probably the biggest insult of all, insisting that no one from the public can walk out and come back in, insinuating in a cynical, veiled way that someone here is going to malevolently bring in a weapon. Please, I have heard no one in here threaten the board. The real issue dividing the patrons of this library appears to be the leadership. The citizens here have much in common. We need leadership and cooperation, not drama and division.
Good evening. Almost a year ago, I sent a sunshine request to the library asking for public records of communications between a 4-month period between the library and the American Library Association. I asked that it include phone calls, text messages, emails, copies of physical mail such as invoices and other communications. I was charged $100 and promised the information within a couple weeks. Eventually, I was provided a flash drive that was virtually unreadable. In April of this year, I made a formal complaint to the Attorney General's office, who then worked with the library to help me get the requested information. Ultimately, I did receive a flash drive that was finally readable. It is 182 pages long, entirely made up of ALA emails pushing various books, book lists, upcoming webinars, interviews with authors, etc. So I conducted a word search within the data using the words LGBTQ, gender, gay, sexuality, queer, transgender, romance, heterosexual, family, Christian, and rainbow. These are the results for the 4-month period. Aside from the context of Christian County Library in the email addresses, there are 0 references to Christians. There are 15 references to LGBTQ, 4 references to gender, 4 references to gay, 5 references to sexuality, 14 references to rainbow, 8 references to queer, 2 references to transgender, 8 references to romance, all referring to lesbian romance, 0 references to heterosexual, and 11 references to family, almost entirely used in one instance referring to a book list for all ages. So there was a total of 71 references, all but 11 explicitly or indirectly referring to LGBTQ sexuality. One of the books pushed was Queer Ducks and Other Animals. It is a young adult book with an LGBTQ agenda being pushed on children aged 12 to 17. Queer Ducks is in the Ozark Young Adult Nonfiction section. Clearly and unsurprisingly, the ALA's advocacy for the LGBTQ agenda is a feature and not a bug. Additionally, the 2 data sets I received were different. On the data set I received from the Attorney General's office, all are to one individual at the library. In the original data set, I was able to perceive multiple different email addresses. At this point, I can only surmise that the library filtered some of the data out that they handed to the Attorney General's office to give to me. In closing, I ask the Board of Trustees to admonish the Executive Director to respond to sunshine requests with transparency. Thank you.
Mike Miller?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Many women from Missouri have touched our lives in ways that are inspiring. Here are thoughts about 3 of them. In 1873, she opened the first publicly funded kindergarten in the United States in the Pear School in St. Louis. She ran it for 11 years without any pay, teaching children in the morning and teachers in the afternoon. Her classroom was bright and cheerful. It had low tables and short benches, just right for small children, along with plants, books, and toys. In addition to academics, kids also learned about keeping themselves clean, eating well, and getting regular exercise. Her work helped St. Louis kindergartens become a model for the nation. Her name was Susan Blow. Our next woman was an activist. When something needed changing, she worked on it. She dabbled with food and sanitation issues before World War I, worked to ensure a safe milk supply for babies, and finally found her cause with women's voting rights. Simply put, she said, I was inspired by the message that women had something to contribute. After women received the right to vote, she stayed active in the League of Women Voters and also advocated for slum clearance, racial integration, and founded John Burroughs School. Her name, Edna Gellhorn. Our third woman of significance wrote, I am beginning to learn that it is sweet, simple things of life, which are the real ones after all. In 1894, she and her husband put down a down payment on a piece of undeveloped property in the Missouri Ozarks. They farmed, started an orchard, and supplemented their income with jobs in Mansfield. Then she started writing. First, it was a column in the Missouri Ruralist, then books about her childhood. These books were the inspiration for a long-running TV show which portrayed the joys and struggles that made up her family's pioneer experience. Chances are good that you have read or seen titles of her books. Her name, of course, Laura Ingalls Wilder. I share these stories with you and hope that you will follow in the footsteps of these courageous women who took a stand for something good. They did not let others stand in their way. They realized that children were precious and that at an early age, they needed good values and watchful eyes to guide them into adulthood. You have the power to do these same things on our library board. It is a right and a responsibility, and our children need your help. You have heard about important issues of concern from parents over the last 18 months, and you know what needs to be done. Listen to your hearts and soul. Don't remain shackled to the pressures of the ALA and other outsiders who say, we know best. You live here, they don't. You see these children every day, they don't. And you have a vested interest in these children.
Thank you. Mary?
Currently, the Christian County Library Board is not a space that is safe for children due to the age-inappropriate content scattered throughout its shelves in the children's and young adult sections of the library. By failing to recognize the concerns of your tax base, you have created roadblocks in supporting the literacy of children in Christian County, hindering the library's role as a vital educational support for the community. I would like to take time today to remind the Christian County Library Board trustees of their duties as outlined in the Missouri Public Library Trustee Manual developed by the Missouri State Secretary of State Librarian. One of the roles of the Library Board of Trustees is to conduct analyses of the community and its needs, and implement responses to those needs, and to build board policies and procedures to work together effectively on behalf of the community. For over a year now, the Christian County Library Board meetings have been full of concerned citizens advocating for the development of an age-appropriate material selection policy for minors, as is required by the library certification requirement for the Protection of Minors rule. Despite concerned citizens coming to the library with a solutions-based approach, we have a board that refuses to listen to the will of the people. We have a board who will not conduct market research or collaborate with its citizens to define what our community deems as age appropriate for minors. Perhaps the most detrimental shortfall of this board has been its failure to provide a model of exemplary performance of a public body functioning as part of government. We currently have a board that will make autocratic last-minute policy changes to public comment, a board whose strong body language shows a great disdain for the public it's supposed to serve. I highly recommend you attend a Christian County Commission meeting on Tuesday mornings or stream a Camden County Library Board meeting to see an example of how a functioning board operates. What you will see are public servants who openly deliberate and discuss relevant county or library issues and actively engage with the citizenry during the meetings. I want to remind you of the legal and fiduciary responsibilities you have been entrusted with in serving your community as library trustees. It is important that you prioritize rewriting the library materials selection policy. Our neighbors to the north in Camden County, Missouri are leading the way, demonstrating how a library board takes their residents' feedback into account to develop a thorough plan on how to make the library safe and accessible to all. The book rating system, implementing a two-tiered library card system, reorganizing content in our libraries, or other suggestions we have made to the board over the last year and a half are not strategies for censorship. They are strategies our library needs to seriously consider how to maximize its impact on the community. It is within the police power of the government to protect the morality of its citizens, and the morality of our children is imperiled by the amount of inappropriate content within arm's reach of the children in the Christian County Library. Thank you.